Welcome back, everybody. Before we get started with this next presentation, I wanted to make sure that I say again that our lead sponsor today, Microsoft, has put together some amazing developer resources for you. You can check those out by clicking the link below. You really should have a look. I mean, I think this next session is going to be really fascinating to hear a little bit more about these resources and stuff going into it. And to introduce the next presenter, we have joining us the Senior GTM Manager for Developer Engagement at Microsoft, Andrew Howell, to the stage. Andrew, welcome. Let's hear about our presenter, April, and what else you got going on. Good to see you.
Thank you for the warm intro, and good morning, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Andrew Howell, and I lead developer engagement for Microsoft here in Canada. For all the other parents out there, I have a 9-month-old who decided last night was party night, so I hope I'm not looking too exhausted on camera. So as the sponsor of Day 3, it's an honor for Microsoft to continue supporting the delivery of Web Unleashed in 2022. And this year, my team and I are excited to bring you a session from April Dunnam, that's what's coming up next, as well as some featured resources that demonstrate the benefits of the Microsoft Power Platform for developers. So you can scan the QR code on this slide, or visit aka.ms/webu22 to learn more about these featured resources. And I'm about to get into more detail on a couple of them here. So we have an upcoming webinar. So on December 13th from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time. It's called How Low-Code Tools Can Modernize Your Development Tasks. And Eric Sauvé will be sharing how Power Platform can help you modernize existing apps, as well as accelerate the creation of new apps. We also have some on-demand training for you. So this is another key resource that I want to highlight. It's a learning path with 3 hours of on-demand training that's hosted on docs.microsoft.com. And this learning path is focused on demonstrating how to build Power Apps using tools and frameworks like JavaScript, ASP.NET Core Web APIs, and Azure API Management. So again, you can scan the QR code on this slide, or go to visit aka.ms/webu22 in order to find these resources that I'm highlighting right now. So I'll just leave it there for another second if anyone's grabbing their phone and wants to scan the QR code. And so finally, I'm proud to introduce the next session in the agenda for Day 3. April Dunnam is a principal cloud advocate for Microsoft that's based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. She describes herself as a process automation pro, collaboration tool enthusiast, YouTuber, and karaoke queen. Over the next 45 minutes, April will be talking about low-code through the lens of the professional developer, and she'll show you how code-first components can be used as an integral part of app development. I just want to take a moment to thank the organizers of Web Unleashed again for doing such an excellent job again this year. And without further ado, I'll turn the microphone over to April. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to my session on using your dev skills to supercharge low-code. My name's April Dunnam, and I'm a principal cloud advocate at Microsoft. Now, what we're going to be covering in this session is why you should consider low-code as a pro dev and why you would care. We'll talk about what the Power Platform has to offer in terms of low-code and professional development integration. And we'll talk about how we supercharge low-code with UI and UX enhancements and integrating your backend services. So let's talk about low-code a bit. Now, low-code has evolved a lot over the years, and we might talk about it often and make it seem like it's some brand new concept, but let's be realistic, low-code has been around for quite a while. One could argue that low-code started with Excel spreadsheets and Access databases. So I think oftentimes when many people think about low-code, they still think of it in this regard, the low-code 1.0, that was the Excel spreadsheet and Access database days, where many people were building solutions on this that were impossible to really govern and scale. But thankfully, low-code has evolved well beyond this. So the next kind of phase of low-code is what we call low-code 2.0. And low-code 2.0 is all about moving beyond the Excel and Access databases into a proliferation of point solutions. And by this, I mean solutions that are really by use case. So you need robotic process automation. You might use a tool like UiPath. Or you need a CRM. You might use something like Salesforce. So these low-code 2.0 tools are really kind of split out by persona. So they're either built for business users or citizen makers, as we often call them, low-code developers, or professional developers, not really both. And with these solutions, your data is often siloed into one database. And these still can be a little bit hard to manage at scale. But where we are today is low-code 3.0. This is about empowering your entire organization. It's built on trust and governance at a company enterprise-wide scale. And we move beyond those data silos into connected data across your systems. And the really important thing about the evolution of low-code and where we're at low-code 3.0 is about a no-cliffs experience, meaning having one tool that is for both citizen developers, low-code makers, and professional developers. So both audiences developing on the same platform. And these tools are also collaboration-centric. They're built into the tools that you're already using day to day. So let's talk a little bit more about this low-code 3.0 concept and some of the defining trends. These top trends are strategic transformation, new participants and methods, and high-impact outcomes. This is about moving from one project at a time in data silos into an innovation engine for your entire company and every system being connected. And the important thing to really hit on here is it's not about low-code or pro-code, or low-code versus pro-code, or citizen developers versus pro developers. It's about both of those audiences and both of those tools coming together to provide solutions in what we call fusion scenarios. But it's also the intersection of humans and AI. So having humans and AI develop together through some of the AI-assisted development that we have in low-code. And then finally, we have hyper-automation, moving beyond forms over data into intelligence infused everywhere. And moving from standalone solutions into solutions that are seamlessly woven into your collaboration solutions. So we talked a lot about the evolution of low code here, but why exactly is this important for you as a professional developer? Well, low code has been and will continue to take off. So one of the struggles that we're seeing with software development today is we simply don't have enough developers to meet the demand. So I'm a developer myself. I did my own consulting company, so I know for a fact that there's no shortage of applications that need to be built, business processes that need to be built out and updated and all of that. So way more demand for this stuff than there are supply of people to meet that demand. So that's where low code is really making and can make a huge impact, is by enabling those citizen developers, the business users or low code devs that are intimately familiar with the business process that they're trying to solve, and bringing them into the loop of the software development lifecycle by having them be a part of the team by using low-code tools. So not only do the low-code tools themselves speed up the process of development, but having those business users be a part of the process and actually able to build part of the solution makes it even faster, since they know the process and the requirements gathering piece is just more seamless. So now hopefully we have a good understanding of how low-code has really evolved and why you might consider looking at low-code as a professional developer. Because again, it's not really a low-code versus a pro-code conversation. It's just about adding another tool in your tool belt that can help you get your job done faster. So now let's segue then into what the Power Platform has to offer in terms of this low-code innovation. The Power Platform is a Microsoft suite of tools for low-code development. So we have Microsoft Power Apps, which is a rapid application development tool that lets you build mobile and desktop applications with a drag and drop interface. We have Power Automate, which is our business process analytics tool. So we can use this one tool to create workflows, do robotic process automation as well. We have Power Virtual Agents, which is a way to build chatbots and virtual agents and bots with no code. And finally, Power BI, which is our dashboard reporting and analytics tool. So all of those kind of encompass everything that you would really need or want to do with business solutions. So those are the tools of the Power Platform, but what makes it really cool and why we're talking about it today is that no cliffs experience. So while we have that no code, low code, business user friendly interface for building solutions, your workflows, your apps, your dashboards and reports and virtual agents and all of that, we also have professional developer integration baked right in. Because of course there's certain trade-offs when using no-code, low-code tools. For what you gain in productivity and ease of use and all of that, you might lose a little customization. They tend to be a little bit more rigid and limiting. But with this professional integration we have, you can really extend the platform beyond the out-of-the-box capabilities. So we're able to easily do things like integrating your external services and APIs. We have this whole model of custom connectors. So a connector is a way for us to bring in data from an API into the Power Platform. So we can create those custom connectors to any API or service that we have. We can even do things like integrating with Azure Functions, adding in additional AI capability with cognitive services, even Kubernetes integration. And as a professional developer, you don't have to leave the tools of your choice to be able to add in some of this integration. So we have Power Platform tooling baked into Visual Studio and VS Code, and we have integration with GitHub as well. And we also have something called AI Builder, which gives us a low-code approach to adding in artificial intelligence into our solutions. So it's baked right into the Power Platform already, and it gives us some pre-built models based off of Azure Cognitive Services to be able to do certain things like object detection, forms recognition, invoice processing, prediction, text analysis, and things like that. But going back to the extensibility, while we have the pre-built models that are very user-friendly, we also have the ability to add in your custom models as well. Now, while the Power Platform is a no-code, low-code tool, there is a formula language that powers how we build the applications that we build inside of the Power Platform, particularly Power Apps. And that's called PowerFX. So what makes building applications in Power Apps so accessible is that it uses PowerFX, and PowerFX is actually based off of the same language that Microsoft Excel uses. So if someone's coming into the platform and they know Excel formulas very well, then they know a lot of PowerFX already and can easily start adding in logic into their applications. And this language is open source, so you can actually contribute to it and improve the language as well. And I mentioned earlier that intersection of low-code 3.0 of humans plus AI. So how this comes across in the Power Platform is through our GPT-3 and Pros integration. So we have something inside of Power Apps called Power Apps Ideas, which actually lets us program by example. It's the same technology that you might know about that GitHub Copilot uses. So it allows us to use natural language to say what we're trying to do. Like I want to be able to see all items assigned to me in this database. And it will produce the PowerFX formula that's needed for that. So it's just another way that we're reducing barriers to being able to build solutions in the Power Platform. Now, one of the key pieces of the platform that I really wanted to touch on today was Power Apps, because this is our tool for low-code application development. So I come from a .NET and C# development background, and I gravitated towards Power Apps really fast. One of the things I loved about it was just how easy it was to get started building an app. The fact that we can build one application and it works seamlessly on your web or mobile device, and you don't have to worry about the different types of device. It's going to work on iOS and Android. So not having to do all of that cross-browser testing and all of that was a real big time saver for sure. But I also really love the integration within Microsoft 365. So if you're doing a lot of work in the Microsoft ecosystem, this is tightly coupled and integrated with SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, OneDrive, and all those services so that we can easily pull in that data into Power Apps, but also embed Power Apps even into Microsoft Teams and SharePoint. And it even has some really advanced capabilities inside of Power Apps, like the ability to have mixed reality components. We have a measuring component, a business card reader, being able to see objects in 3D. And a big thing that comes up when we're talking about low code and really using low code tools for application development is it secure? We're able to actually test this and run it through appropriate ALM practices. Well, the answer with Power Apps is yes, we can do all of that. It does support healthy ALM practices. Like I mentioned with GitHub integration, we have a concept of environments in the Power Platform, and being able to have those dev, test, and prod environments and moving your solutions between those. And we have security, things like being able to do data loss prevention policies if we're worried about data leaks and how we're connecting with different data sources. So how do we actually go over now to Power Apps and see how the process of building an app works? So Power Apps is part of Microsoft 365. So if you have a Microsoft 365 license, you should be able to log in and get access to Power Apps. So everything here is done in the browser. So we build the applications right here in line in the browser of your choice. The process of building an app is pretty simple. We go to New App. We have a few different types of Power Apps that we can create. So we have a Canvas app, which as the name implies, gives us a blank canvas that we can customize pixel perfect. And we have model-driven apps as well. Those are tightly coupled with Dataverse, and they start from your data model. So you build out your data model inside a Dataverse, and it actually builds an application for you. And the cool thing about these two types of applications is that they can be integrated with each other. So you can build a model-driven application for like a back-end type management application, and you can integrate and embed a Canvas app inside of that model-driven app. Let's do the Canvas app just to see the experience here. So say we want to create an application for time off. So you'll notice we can do a tablet or phone, so we can kind of choose the form factor. Now Power Apps is capable of adding in responsive design principles. So we don't have the ability to add in a responsive framework like Bootstrap, but we can do things like manipulating the X and Y coordinates and the height and width and things like that to be able to add in that responsiveness. That's for Canvas apps. Model-driven apps are actually responsive out of the box, so you don't have to do anything there. So we'll just optimize this for the tablet since we're on the computer here, and we'll just look at how the experience of building an app in Power Apps works. Because now while as a pro dev you might be more concerned about some of the integrations that you can do, I do want to show how this could be, depending on your use case, a viable solution for an app that you might want to use to try out. So the experience that you're seeing, it really looks to me a lot like PowerPoint. So kind of building out a slide deck a bit for building out the user interface. So we have all of these pre-built controls that we can have and build out here. So if I know I need a button to be able to go click into something, I can just drag and drop that on the screen and use my properties that we have here on the right-hand side to control the look and feel of the button. So changing the fill color, for example, and changing things like the font and the size and everything of how this looks. So I might increase the font size there a bit. And then we can of course change the text here, like maybe this is a submit button. So building out the UI is really just a matter of adding in the objects. And as I mentioned before, we have a lot of advanced capabilities. So in addition to the things that we would expect, like labels and buttons and drop downs, date pickers and all of that, we have the ability to easily do a pin input. So if you have a scenario where you need to build a signature collection capability into your application, you can easily do that with this component. And another thing when we're talking about extensibility is we can actually extend what's possible in the Power App with this HTML text control. I always like to point this out because, again, you might think you're limited by the bounds of what's included inside of the tool, all the different pre-built components, but we can interject our own HTML and CSS, really customize the look and feel. Some of the other things I wanted to make sure to point out is under the Media tab, some of the advanced capabilities we have a camera control, 3D objects, the ability to add pictures, have microphone, audio, video, barcode scanning using your native device barcode scanning capability, and those mixed reality controls that I mentioned earlier. So being able to view things in mixed reality, measure in markup in mixed reality. So that's really how easy it is to kind of get started building these Power Apps. Just to give you an idea of some of the apps that can be built with this. This is a leave request application, so I can log in as an employee and I can see all of my different leave requests and I can submit one. I can easily submit a new request here, selecting the type of leave I want. We have calendar pickers. And you see we can, with PowerFX, that formula language, we can do a little bit of conditional logic here. So if the start date is after the end date, we can have a little message pop up. I can submit my request. Can even have things like pop-ups as well. And now it will let me submit that and it will go and process my request. So just a good example of some of the things that we can do here. So this one is optimized for the tablet. An example of one optimized more for the mobile device is this event management application where we can have this landing page. We can go to the agenda and see sessions and filter by day. Click on a session, go to a screen and see all the details about it there. So just a few examples of some of the things that can be built with Power Apps. Something that was recently added to Power Apps was the ability to add the applications you build inside of Power Apps as standalone applications using mobile device management apps. So whether you're using Microsoft Endpoint Manager or whatever tool of your choice, you can actually use that and brand the application accordingly and have those inside of your private app stores to deliver the apps that way. So again, that is kind of the use for Power Apps, just to have that clarity, is for internal use and development. It's not something that you would go put and develop and put on the public app store. It's for your internal line of business apps, but we now have this additional option to deploy using mobile device management for that more streamlined branded experience. Now, one of the other things I really wanted to touch on too from a Power App standpoint that's very interesting from a professional developer side of things is something called Express Design. So some of the applications I just demoed there for Power Apps, you might think those are cool, but I could probably make something look maybe a little bit better and the tool of my choice, right? So with Express Design, we're kind of making the story a little bit easier because we have Figma integrations. So with this new Express Design capability, we can actually generate a Power App from a Figma file. So this is really closing the gap with us between design and development. So we can take a file from Figma using the Microsoft Power Apps toolkit that we have on Figma now, and it will build the application in Power Apps pixel perfect for you based off of your design. So not only is this a huge time saver, but it's going to help you build really nice looking applications inside of Power Apps. So this will support all the most common controls like your text inputs, dates, drop downs, and all of that. And all you have to do is supply your Figma URL and the app will be generated automatically. So we can go down and choose the Figma option from the start from, which we just looked at earlier. We can give the application a name. We'll put in that Figma link that we generated, and then our personal access token. Now we can choose the format that we want to optimize this for. We'll choose phone, and we'll click create, and behind the scenes it will go do the magic of using some of that AI capability for object detection in the backend and generate an application for us based off of our design. So this is all ready to use in Power Apps. All we have to do is wire up some of the logic in the backend, and now we have all of our application pixel perfect. So it's really kind of groundbreaking functionality that we have here to be able to generate an app from Figma. Now we're not limited with Express Design to just generate an app from Figma. We also have the ability to generate apps from PDFs and even hand-drawn images. So this is pretty cool functionality to be able to, again, using the custom vision capability of Azure Cognitive Services to recognize what you have in a PDF form or a hand-drawn form and produce an application for you. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the low-code and pro-dev use cases. So in addition to that Figma integration that we just looked at, where we can generate a good design for Power Apps based off of a Figma file and have it build the app for us, we have the ability to augment the user experience and user interface of our Power Apps even more with our pro-dev skills through something called the Power Apps Component Framework and the ability to create custom components with that. So why build custom controls? As we saw in Power Apps when we looked at it earlier, there's a lot of out-of-the-box controls already, and we can customize those quite a bit and even embed some HTML and CSS, but there might be something that isn't there included out of the box, or you might need something more tailored, so the ability to add your own custom controls and integrate them in Power Apps would be really cool. So as part of the pro-dev integration that we offer here, we can use our pro-dev tools that we're familiar with, like Visual Studio, and our React, JavaScript, HTML skills to be able to build custom controls that we can then use inside of Power Apps. So you use those skills to build those as a pro dev, and then you can pass those on to the low-code makers who can then consume those easily inside of their Power Apps. Because that's the important part. You build them, but citizen devs can use them without having to write a line of code. So one of the things that we don't have in Power Apps, for example, is the ability to iframe content in. That's not one of the out-of-the-box controls. So you might turn to Power Apps Component Framework and build your own custom control to handle that. So if you're kind of interested in what's even possible with the Power Apps Component Framework for you to extend it with your pro dev skills, we have this great site called pcf.gallery where tons of people have built some amazing Power Apps Component Framework controls that you can look at. Now there is one here for an iframe, so we can kind of take a peek at what's going on behind the scenes here in the code to get a glance of what a PCF component looks like. So you can build a component here with full code, but again, from a maker experience, from someone using Power Apps, what's really cool is all they have to do is take what you built and you can package it up as what's called a solution. So we do have a command line interface for the Power Platform, which you can package up what you build in your Power Apps Component Framework as a solution. So they would just go to import and they would take your solution, upload that into their Power Platform environment. And then if they want to use that component, they just go into the Power App, go into their control screen and say get more components. So we have different component libraries here, and this is where your custom built component with code could live. So one of these components that I have here is a progress indicator, for example. So now that's available as a library component. And I simply add that on and configure it just like I would any of the out-of-the-box controls. So again, really great way to extend what's possible out of the box with Power Apps with your pro code skill with these components. So probably the biggest integration point with pro dev and low code with the Power Platform is through custom connectors. Custom connectors are just a wrapper around an API. And that's what the Power Platform uses to connect to different APIs. We have over actually 700 now different connectors to various SaaS services, but we can build custom connectors as well to any RESTful API that you have. So this really shows at a high level how to supercharge the Power Platform with your dev skills. You can start by building a service, or maybe you already have one and maybe it interacts with legacy data. You can build an API and publish it as an Azure function to Azure API Management. That has the integration built in to export your API as a connector that the Power Platform can use. So now anyone in your org can easily consume data or write data back to your API with that connector. And then of course we can extend the UI and UX of our Power Apps, as we mentioned earlier, with building those custom components. So just to show you how easy, if you do have your APIs in Azure API Management, it is to create a Power Connector, we can simply go into our service here. We can see all of the different operations that we have within Azure API Management. We can have built-in testing as well. So all that's baked in, of course. But now we can go over to the Power Platform tab. So we have the ability to create a connector and even update one. So we can link to a Power Platform environment. So as I mentioned, we can have multiple environments here in the Power Platform. We can select the environment that we want to publish the connector to. And now we simply add our API to link this API to the environment. So we can point to that API there and our authorization provider. And now that we have that link, we can refresh our connectors tab inside of Power Apps, and we'll see our connector there to our API. Now we can actually use this inside of an application. So on our pharmacy screen, we want to be able to return products and submit an order. So we can go into add data and we can search through our connectors and find that custom connector that was just generated for us. Now that's added in inside of our app and we're able to use it. And one of the cool things is that Power Apps has a built-in monitor. So I can actually run through and test out my application. Now that I've wired up the app to call my API, I can fill out the information that I need here, like my name, the store that I need. I can fetch the products. So that's calling the API there to do a get. It's showing all the products. I can select one, the quantity, and do the submit also, the post. And all while that's happening, we have the monitor running in the background so I can see for every click that I took what happened and what the request was. So they have this monitoring baked into Power Apps. And one of the cool things that was recently released as well is if you have a custom connector that you built from your API, there's a new option, sort of like that Figma integration that we mentioned with Express Design, to be able to generate an app automatically from your API. So it'll take the schema of your Swagger file and generate a Power App based off of that for you. All right, well, that's all that I had. I want to thank you so much for letting me come and talk about low code with you all. Hopefully this gave you a good idea of how you can use your pro dev skills to really supercharge low code and why it's beneficial for you to take a look at. So next steps for you, we have a Microsoft Learn path on what Fusion development is and what the process looks like with the Power Platform. You can go to aka.ms/learn Fusion Dev. If you want to check out the command line interface that we have and some of the things that you can do with that, there's a link to that. We also have some PCF examples, that Power Apps component framework that you can build those custom controls with. So if you want to see what's possible, you can go to pcf.gallery. And finally, if you have any questions at all, and if you're curious about the Power Platform and low code and how you can get started with it, please reach out to me. I'm available on Twitter. I have my Twitter link there at April Dunnam, on LinkedIn. And then I also have a YouTube channel. So if you're wanting to dip your toes into the Power Platform waters and want some more detailed videos on how to get started, you can check out my YouTube there. I have several different resources for you. So thank you so much for having me today. It was great talking with you all.
Oh, that was awesome. Thank you so much, April. That was actually way more interesting than I was even expecting. I mean, I've loved every talk, but especially as somebody that has decided that maybe I don't want to spend a whole lot of time as a developer anymore, that this looks like a lot of fun to play with. So thank you, Microsoft, and thank you, April.
Thanks.
So we've got a few questions starting to filter in, and I know I certainly have a whole lot running through my mind. So again, if nobody else puts stuff in there, then I get to ask all the questions. Just saying.
So
first thing I'm curious about is, what if you wanted to bring in your own, maybe not exactly full design system, but like your own sort of style rules? Is there a way to do that with this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So with Power Apps, we have built-in themings, but like as far as the ability to really bring in your own styles and like kind of like have a framework for that, not at the moment. That Figma integration that I showed, though, as
Right.
far as like making styles easy, that's probably going to be like the best way at the moment to be able to kind of design it in Figma with all of your styles and have it just easily imported
Right.
in. We can do custom themes and stuff like that, kind of similar to what we have and like the Office products and stuff, but not really being able to bring in like a CSS framework or something like that, like design.
Right. Well, I mean, the way we have things set up, all of our components are set up in Figma. So I guess we would kind of get it along for the ride. I was just it's very curious to see where that was headed. So that answers that question. I mean, there was a couple of really pretty amusing comments in there about how much in danger our jobs are as designers, but that Figma integration was pretty amazing. I mean, that still lets us do our work and then work with the things that are normal to us, and then still be able to plug into that sort of easy way of building things. How long has that been around? Is that something that's been pretty well put through its paces?
It's really new, actually. So it's only been there for a few months. So it's a brand new tech. So really hoping to get more feedback on what people think of it. But I hope that's like kind of like the overall story that everyone got from the session, is that allowing you to use the tools you're already using, but then just easily integrate it with low code. So you can have your designs in Figma, just bring that in, have it build the app for you, and just reduce some of the work or tedious stuff that you might not want to do. So not taking away any jobs, just make it easier for you to do the stuff that you're already doing, and then integrate it with low code so that other people can add in some other things, and you can have that fusion team of low code devs and pro devs working together.
Well, I think it's a really interesting theme that's been running through a few of these talks. I mean, that when we were hearing about oh gosh, now I'm totally drawing a blank. Using feature flags yesterday from Launch Darkly. That was something that was really interesting, talking about how they could put that control in the program manager's hands. so that they had all of this capability and they had the ability to turn it on and off, again, without doing any code or a deploy to do that. We've thought about that quite a bit in terms of what we get out of using a design system by being able to sort of take the easy stuff and then have the time to think through the hard stuff, as it were. That seems to be exactly where this is headed. How much do you see I don't know if there is a normal usage, but how much do people stay within the box of like all the things that you provide versus jumping into creating custom functionality for it? Is there any kind of trend that you've seen?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely, taken off. So like there's, the great thing about low code technology is that you have an easy button to build stuff, but like with that easy button, sometimes you sacrifice like the true ability to customize. But with, as you saw, like with some of the stuff that we have in the Power Platform, we have that extension model, and we see us, people really mature in their low code journey. So they're doing more and more and wanting to integrate more. We're seeing those integrations become more prominent and more common, like integrating, whether it's integrating with other services or building those custom components that I showed there towards the end, those widgets to extend the user interface. So all kinds of different scenarios there, but that's becoming more and more prevalent as kind of it evolves.
Right. Well, that sort of leads into something that you did touch on towards the end there that I thought was really interesting about adding in different APIs. So now I gather that you can connect to whatever API you want to connect to. Is that the kind of thing where people could use it to kind of bring in content from their CMS or other sources to be able to, I don't know, kind of enhance the capabilities of the app that they're building?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, that's probably like the biggest integration point from a pro dev standpoint into the Power Platform is that easy button, the ability to integrate your APIs and backend services into the platform. So in addition to those 700 connectors that we have, that custom connector model. So a connector just being that wrapper around the API. So any service, any RESTful API that we have, we're able to just easily add in that integration, add it as a connector, and then that's usable not only in like Power Automate if we want to do some automations to it, but then also Power Apps, which I showed in the session as well, to build applications connecting to that data. So it's just one connector that enables all these different services in the Power Platform that you can build all these solutions on top of it and mix and match and bring different services together easily.
And I think that you touched on this in there too, but in terms of like the permissioning of access to those APIs, is that something that's built into it too as well? So if you wanted to do, the read, write, delete, update, all that kind of thing through those APIs, is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So with connectors too, we have DLP, data loss prevention policies that we can set up for each connector that you use. So you could, if you build a custom connector to a service, you can set a DLP policy down to like the action level that your connector does.
Oh, wow.
So whether it's, doing a get, doing, like a post, whatever it's doing, and say, this can't mix with this. So like it's kind of a combination. So if you're trying to connect to your, backend service, but then you're also allowing connections to Twitter, you can mix and match policies saying you can't connect to this data and then also post a tweet. You can kind of get really granular there on those permissions. Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. That's cool stuff. And so are there some example apps that do some of these things that people can use to kind of get a jump start?
Yeah, so like on some of the resources that we mentioned there on our Fusion Dev content, there's lots of sample apps. So like that Fusion Dev in a day walks you through a sample scenario of how you would integrate an API into Power Apps and Power Automate there. And we have a lot of examples there too on our Microsoft Learn site of these Fusion scenarios. Yep.
And so taking that a step further, do you, and you may not be able to say, but do you know of apps that have been developed using this platform that are actually live in one of the app stores like Google or the iOS app store?
Yeah, well, so that is something like I didn't touch on a lot in the session, but so the Power Platform, Power Apps is not something that you would build a public facing
Oh, okay.
application in the app store. So it's for your internal, like
Got
line
it.
of business type applications. Now, while we can, with mobile device management, put them out there in private app stores, it's not like a
Right.
public consumption thing because it's meant for your organization in your business scenario. Although we do have Power Pages, which is like a web dev. I didn't touch on that too much in the session, but it's our like website development low code tool, which can be
Hmm.
for like a more public facing audience. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I recall now that you had that in one of your slides.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. But I would
Yeah.
imagine that an awful lot of organizations already have some way to
Yeah.
deploy apps internally.
Yeah, for
That's
sure. I mean,
great.
there's as far as studies of examples of companies using this internally for line of business applications and within their environments. There's a lot on our doc site.
So now that you've got this platform in place, and you've got more and more people using it, I'm curious. I'm gonna sort of out myself as being really old here, but I remember when I ended up getting invited to Microsoft's offices up in Waltham for the introduction. Get ready for this: Windows NT4 and the first ASP, and I remember like playing with those things, and you use the stuff out of the box. It's great. You can do a whole bunch of really cool things, and you hit this wall of like, oh my gosh, I can't, and now I've got to like completely rebuild everything. I've seen that get better every time I've seen other sort of major introductions over the years from from Microsoft with the tools. What's that? I know you talk about trying to avoid the cliff, but once you get to that point where you are passing by what these pre-built things will do for you, how bad is it? How much are you sort of recreating if you get past what some of these pre-built things work and you have to start to dig into it and extend those capabilities?
It's honestly not that bad. I mean, because when you think about it, if you're building something to integrate with different APIs, I mean, the model is just putting that wrapper around your API. So you already have your
Hmm.
API. If you ever need to go to like a web app or something like that instead of a Power App as your front end, right? So you're not having to reproduce really your back end work that you've already did as far as that aspect of the front end work. I mean, I haven't ran into a lot of examples in my experience, like consulting before I was in Microsoft, even and now, of companies that have really hit a cliff with it because of that component framework model of really, because oftentimes it's kind of in the UI where you might hit a cliff there, and we can really extend it and do whatever we need to do with React and different controls with the component framework in there. So I haven't really noticed that. Not to say that there's not going to be a cliff, but so far as it's really held up, and I think that the infrastructure of how it works is really conducive to
Hmm.
moving on to something else if you need to.
Right. Well, I think, as I said, I've seen that improve steadily over the years, and I'm really excited to take a look at this. It's not something that I had come across before, so it looks like I've got some experimentation to do to kind of play around with some of these things. Where do you see this going next? What's kind of the next frontier that you're hoping to be able to tackle with this?
Yeah, I mean, as you saw, like a lot of the AI stuff that we're doing
Hmm.
already with being able to create the app from the design, and that's kind of permeating throughout the platform as well to help even not only from the pro dev side, but from the person coming into it with no dev background, a lot of having to know the ins and outs of expressions, right? And how to kind of formulate like an expression language to do something. I think you're going to see a lot of innovation there to make it even easier.
Hmm.
Like just for Power Automate alone, a couple of weeks ago, we announced a feature where you can describe a workflow process in natural language that you want to do. Like I want to have, when I get an email, I want to go add the document from the email into my Salesforce database or whatever it is,
Hmm.
right? You can describe that in natural language and it will build the workflow for you in Power Automate. So I think more of that functionality is going to start going across the Power Platform to make it just easier to even get started across the board. But then also just a big focus on letting devs stay in their desired tooling and do the integration seamlessly. I think that's a theme that we'll just
Right.
keep seeing more focus on.
That I think that's a perfect way to wrap this up. I do want you to know that citizen developer phrase that you used in there is really resonating. A lot of people were reacting to that, and I think that's such a great way to think about that. I mean, for design too, making sure that you can create these things that are useful enough to people that they can go about doing the work they need to do, not spend time figuring out how to do the work they need to do. And that's really incredibly powerful. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all this, April.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It was really fun. Let me know if you have any questions too after this. I'm available on social media too. So.
Oh, absolutely. I have a feeling you're going to be getting pestered